Let's start.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, or say good afternoon, depending on how you decide how to define evening or afternoon. So today we're going to continue to talk about cryptography, and this is going to be the fourth class and probably the second last or the third last class of crypto. So basically, we've been half of the crypto session. We're going to continue to talk about crypto. And after that, and I guess a good news for you guys is it's likely that after the crypto part, you will have live sessions in this time. We're going to switch the live sessions and recorded sessions. So probably starting from like the week after next week, this session will be a live session. So if you prefer live session than a recorded session, then this is good news to you. Okay, so let's start today.
All right, guys, let's start. Good morning and hello to everyone. So today we're going to continue to talk about crypto. And today we're going to talk about symmetric and asymmetric crypto. So if you still remember last time, we talked about block cipher. And we talked about DS and AES. So we also talk about all different kinds of attacks that could potentially be very harmful to DES attack. Sorry, to DES crypto. Today, then we want to talk about a more operational level thing, which is how to operate on multiple blocks. Recall that previously, all we talk about is, operate on a single block. And today we want to talk about how to operate on multiple blocks. If there are multiple blocks, if there is a message composed by multiple blocks that or say you want to divide the message into each of the single chunks so that you're going to encrypt it one by one, then what is the correct way to operate it without harming security? So the first one, I'm going to talk about two different kinds of schemes, and then I'm going to ask you which one is the, I'm going to check with you for each of the scheme, why is secure or why is not secure, okay? And then let me start with the first one. The first one is called ECB. I think it's called Electrical Code Book. And the way that works is that given a plain text, you're going to cut it into blocks. And then for each block, then you're going to just use DS. Let's just suppose that, DS is secure. We'll say instead of DS, something like triple DS, that we know that it's secure. So using a specific crypto system, using this K, a given K, it's a symmetric key, using the key to encrypt the block so that you will get ciphertext. So we're going to do this block by block, and we will have every ciphertext. And then we just concatenate them together, and we have the entire ciphertext. So this is called ECB. So this is pretty easy. It's just like cut plain text into blocks, and then use block cipher to encrypt each block one by one, and then concatenate those blocks together, like after encryption. So question for you guys. This ECB will have a, maybe I would say this is a property, maybe I would say this is an issue, but it will have a character that same plain text will be encrypted to the same ciphertext, right? Because here, say, for example, if there are two blocks and they're the same, then those blocks, they experience the exact identical operations, so they will come up with the same ciphertext. So my question is, given this fact, what can be an issue? What is the potential issue is if every plain text will be, as long as the plain text is the same, so every same equal plain text will be encrypted to the same ciphertext. Okay, I saw you guys are talking, are giving ideas in chat. So one possibility is you can infer the type of operation used. Yes, you can infer that, right? You can infer that this could be a DCB. But then let's just assume that that is fine. I mean, or say, yes, suppose I'm an attacker, and then now that I know that this is ECB, so what? Does it harm, like, does it stop me? Or does it really help me to infer what the actual message is? And it said, now we only need one plain text and ciphertext pair to do a known plain text attack. That's correct. So that means that every plain text will have a same ciphertext, so only need a pair to do a known plain text attack. But still, like, if the plain text comes to the same encrypted text, and then what if I just don't put ES over here? What if this is AES, so that I know that it is secure? So even though I know the plain text and ciphertext pair, I will not still be able to know like what exactly the plain text, like to encrypt or say to decrypt in the future plain text. So DS is data encryption standard. Yes, that is correct. And an ECB, it is this way, like the way that we operate multiple blocks together. ECB is short for, I believe it's short for electrical code book, but I could be wrong. Guys, just help me search and then let me know. I'm also gonna just search it. Okay, it's electronic code book. Okay. And Austin said, can you infer the key from a multiple ciphertext block due to the use of the same key of each block? That's a very good question. Let's assume that we're using AES. So it means that we cannot really infer the key. But I think, guys, you are getting close. And I'm going to just give you this answer because this could be something that it's very hard to really imagine. So I'm going to just give you the answer now. So the answer is the following. If every plain text is encrypted to the same ciphertext, as long as the plain text is the same, then we kind of lose entropy in the sense that if you look at this picture, you will have a better idea. So suppose that we have a picture like this, and then we want to encrypt this picture. So this is our original one. And then after it is encrypted, this is what it looks like. Entropy is what I mean. So if you look at this, you found that, right, it is encrypted somehow, right? Like ECB encrypted because every pixel is converted to another pixel. However, because those same pixels are converted to another same pixel, if you look at this whole picture, you can still tell that this is a Linux pigeon. So you can still tell the information. So this is what we call as like an encryption, but it doesn't really shuffle, like it doesn't really randomize the picture, because if you want to encrypt a picture, what you really hope is that this pigeon just disappear in encryption. You will no longer be able to tell that there is a pigeon over there. But if we're using in ECB, if you were using electrical code book, then you can still tell. It just like you have another mapping between the ciphertext and the plain text. So that could be a problem, right? Because if that is the case, then it somehow harms the integrity, because it doesn't really shuffle the pixel. It doesn't really randomize it so that you will not be able to tell what the picture is. You can still be able to tell. So I saw some questions from chat. Ethan said that I was wondering if this technology is used in those caption verification thing. Good question. Honestly, I don't know. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. So I will just leave you to Google online and see if the ECB is still like used in caption verification. Okay, now I'm going to continue. Now we know that ECB is not secure because of like the loss of entropy, or say like same plain text will still be encrypted into the same ciphertext. Then the question is that, can we come up with a better blockchaining way, like a better multi-block encryption scheme, so that we can add more entropy there, we can guarantee, or say we can at least mitigate this kind of issue. So here comes the Cipher blockchaining scheme. The way that it works is that, suppose again we have a couple of blocks. So and those blocks come from a plain text. And then using the first block, we get a ciphertext. But then later on, like in the next, we use this ciphertext as part of the operation of the next block. So we have the ciphertext, and then we use this ciphertext combined with the original block, the plain text, the next plain text block. We XOR them together, and then we encrypt it. And then we got the ciphertext, right? So we got the next ciphertext, and then we just keep it going until we get the entire plain text. So in this case, every plain text starting from the second one, this one has the correlation with this one, right? And this one is correlated with this one. This is correlated with this one. This is correlated with this one. And this is what we call this as chaining. So it's like list, right? It's like list in data structure. We just chain all them together. However, you may ask them, what if the first one, right? So like you still have the plain text the same as before. Doesn't mean that every first block of the plain text of the ciphertext, they will still have this problem. And that as long as the blocks are the same, then the first block of ciphertext will be the same. So how to mitigate that? The way that it works is that we add a IV, which is called initial vector. So let me write over here. IV is short for initial vector. It was in this way we chain every block together. And as Peter said, this is definitely a blockchain, but this is not the blockchain. So this is the way that we chain those, encryptions. It may not be CDS because as we said, it is insecure right now. It could be AES, like a better blocker, block cipher scheme. So we use this way to chain them together so that we can guarantee that the ciphertext is not going to be like keep consistent with the block if the block is the same. But then here, I'm going to raise another question to you guys. What if IV is predictable? And that means that if you know about the IV, and then because of the IV, you know about the next IV. So let me just make this a little bit more concrete, more specific so that you know that what I mean. So first of all, for this CVC, I'm gonna just write on the blank space. I will have a sender and a receiver. I would say this is Alice and this is Bob. Okay, so when Alice sends a message to Bob, Bob will receive an IV and an encrypted message. And this encrypted message uses the key of K with the plain text. I will say this is M, okay? And then we'll say this entire thing is C. And then, by the way, guys, now I'm like come to math again. So I will use those notations again. If you are confused, please let me know ASAP so that you won't be confused later because we'll have more and more math coming in. Okay, so now we have the message that Alice is going to send to Bob, which is composed of two parts. One is the initial vector, and the other part is the encrypted message. And for Bob, because Bob has the key, because Bob is a legitimate receiver, what Bob would do is that Bob will just use his key to decrypt this message, right? So Bob will have that using his key, he will get the message, but not in this simple way, because here the message has been chained by initial vector. So what Bob would do is that suppose that this is C, and then this is composed of C1, C2, C3, C4, C5. All right. So what Bob needs to do is that given the C1 to C5, let me remove this. It will first recover the first block. Let's just call this M1. And the way that works is that it has the key, it has the C1, right? So it first do a decryption using the key, using the C1, and then it do an XOR IV. I will start. There's no subscription, just IV. And then you can get M1, right? And so on and so forth. Every time you have this C, say CK, you decrypt it using the key, and then you plus the block that I already got, which is CK minus 1, right? So that you will be able to get every plain text. Okay, so now what I'm asking you is that what if IV is predictable? Meaning that, now I'm gonna clear this, guys, and then move on to the next slide. Meaning that suppose there is a crypto system using, say, CBC, but with predictable. All right. And then there is a bad person, evil. Suppose that the crypto system first sends 2 messages, one of these 2 messages. So this message, again, it contains both the vector and the encryption, the encrypted ciphertext. But it could be, for example, maybe this crypto system, what it does is to decide whether or not someone passes or passes an exam. For example, I'm trying to come up with this example. For example, there is a person, let's just say, call it Bob. Bob may pass or may not pass an exam, and then crypto system is gonna just record this to a particular place. So crypto system send this message. This message contains the initial vector for this specific message, as well as an encrypted message of whether or not Bob passes the exam. And now, suppose that you are an attacker. When you can also receive this message, but evidently you cannot encrypt it because you don't know the key of K. So I'm going to write here, evil doesn't know K, but evil knows about the message that he received. It could be either C0 or C1. So evil knows IV first. And he got a ciphertext. Now the question for you is that suppose that given IV1, evil knows that the next message that the crypto system is going to send to evil or anyone else is going to use IV2. Like this is a known initial vector. So if evil knows that IV2 will be used as the next initial vector in the next message, then what can evil does? What can evil do to know which message that this crypto system sent before, like between C0 and C1, which one is the correct one that the crypto message sent to evil? Like, how can evil know that whether or not Bob passes the exam? I'm going to give you some time, and meanwhile, I am going to go through the chat. And Peter is correct. You have to get both IV and K to decrypt. So in each message, there's only one IV. But next time, when there's a new message, the IV will be changed. I will talk about some practical example of how does evil know about IV2 in practice. But now let's just assume that evil can know IV2 given IV1. Yes, there is a way to infer from infer IV2 from IV1. Actually, Emma, since you're asking right now, I can tell you that this happens in the real world. Like this is a real world vulnerability. And what it does is that previously IV is set as the same as the previous encrypted message. So it's like IV2 was designed to be equal to E of the encrypted message. And that causes issue because that means that every time, as long as you get the previous encrypted message, you will know the next IV2. All right, guys, I'm going to give you some time to think about how you could do if you're an attacker, how can you construct a message in order to know previously what the message is, if it's C0 or C1, and then given that there's only two possibilities. Pass and fail they're just the message. So let's say pass fail is the plain text, and evil's goal is to guess, or say is to infer with 100% guarantee that which message is the previous one. So is that like a pass the previous plain text, or fail is the previous plain text? Right, so there are two possibilities that you're trying to choose from. Exactly, Emma. And Dean said, you could find a mathematical relationship between IV and K based on known plain text. Okay, then if you're thinking this way, then can you come up with a more concrete like relationship? What kind of mathematical relationship that you can infer based on the known plain text? And Peter also says that he could try decrypting C2 with IV1 and infer which one was sent based on M2. Can you show me the formula? Like, can you show me that how are we gonna, what is the plain text that you're gonna ask the crypto system to encrypt if you're evil, if you're the attacker? And another question, if each Roglio, by the way, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly. So if each IV is based on the previous encrypted message, couldn't we look at IV2 to find out if the previous one was passed or failed? That's exactly the question here. So can we or can we not, if we know IV2? If we can, then how?
I have an idea. I don't know if this would work, but if evil sends a message and then to the crypto system and then receives back,
yes,
what would be used as the encryption, what would be used as the IV for the next one, then whoever sends the next message would be using evil's encrypted message that they received from the crypto system the last time. Is that?
I mean, right now, let's just assume that evil, like the question itself here, to be more specific, is that, right, evil is going to send a message to the crypto system now, like given that evil knows that this time when crypto system is going to return a message back to evil, it's going to be, the crypto system is going to use IV2, which is something that evil already like predict, right? So then the question here is that, can evil construct this message good enough so that evil will know previously when the crypto system sent this message, like one from this two, right? Which one is the right one that crypto system sent before? Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, thanks.
Yep, so the question is, like here, this question is not looking at the future messages that like someone sent after evil. The question is, now you're gonna send this message to know this previous transaction, know the previous message. And another question is, how does evil know the plain text? So this is the way that this attack model is like specified. Like, let's assume that evil can ask crypto system of a chosen plain text attack. I will talk about that a little bit later. But right now, let's just assume that evil now has the capability to ask the crypto system to encrypt something for evil. Like evil is going to ask a crypto system that this is a plain text, encrypt this for me. And the question is, does the correct C equal to IV2? No. All right, Dean has an idea. Encrypt P1 XOR P2. I suppose P, what do you mean? P here is the plain text. You're getting close, but not exactly what it is. I want you to keep thinking. But you are definitely getting close. Like you're getting the right direction, which is we want to construct this message, like this plain text, to something that will be very similar to the previous one, like to one of the previous message. All right, and then I'm looking at my solution. IV1 XOR IV2 is equal to K and M. I don't quite what it means. If you would like to know more about that, let me know more about that, just type it in chat. I'm gonna follow up that. All right, and then Peter's giving more solution. So Peter is saying, let's do decrypt of, so it's the decrypt of K and C2, XOR C1, but you don't know K. I'm supposing, like right now, I suppose that what you mean is what Eva's gonna construct is that it's the plain text XOR the C1, but you don't know the plain text of the previous one. So because you don't know the key. So if you don't know the K, which is the key, then how are you gonna get the D of K C2? All right, I think David is very, very, very close. Actually, I would say what you are saying is the correct message. This is amazing. Good. And then I'm gonna just give you guys a few more seconds to think about this, or just look at David's solution and think about why this is correct. And then I'm gonna explain David's solution. And good job, David. Okay, guys, now let's start. I also saw the question coming from, or say the solution, the potential solution coming from Peter, and a question from Dean. So Peter asks about, can we just use C2 to solve the equation for K and C1? I don't think so, but you can look into that direction. If it works, just let me know. But I personally don't think that you can use C2 to solve the equation for K and C1. And Dean was asking, according to David, does it mean that we send IV1 XOR IV2? Not exactly, but it's quite close. All right, so I'm gonna clear this up and then go to the next slide. And guys, it is okay that you cannot like construct, or you don't know how to answer this question by yourself. I would say this is more of like a brain teaser. You know, it's a very cute and smart question, and then you can construct it, or maybe you cannot. Even though you cannot, it is fine as long as you know the answer. So that now you know how you can attack this potential model with predictable IV. So the key point for you is that I hope you can understand in the future that this is the right way to construct this message so that you can launch such types of attack. And also I want you to know that this is one way of doing attack, which we call this chosen plain text attack, which I will talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so here is the way that we're gonna do, like for Evo. First of all, this is the the conditions that we already have. We know that the crypto system send either C0, which is equal to this guy, or C1, which is equal to this guy, right? And then now Evo knows about IV because EV knows about this message C0 or C1, and then both C0 and C1 contain the information regarding IV1, and Evo knows about IV2. Now, what Evo is going to do is that Evo going to send another message, which is a plain text, and ask the crypto system to encrypt it. And what Evo can do is that Evo send this as the plain text. So Evo going to put pass, this is the message, right? And then pass actual IV1, actual IV2. So this is the previous, one of the possibilities from the previous plain text. And Eva's going to have that actual both IV1 and IV2. And here's the cute part. If crypto system receive this as the plain text, then according to how the ECB works, the crypto system is gonna encrypt this. So encrypt this message. And the way that it works is that it will first have this the message to be encrypted. XOR the IV2 that he's going to use this time, and then encrypt it using the key of K. And then it will send this encrypted message along with the IV2 back. This is the message, which is the same as here. I'm just do the deduction for you so that you know how this comes from. And then here, IV2, we don't really care because we already predict this out. And then the interesting part is this part. So why is it interesting? Because if we look at this message, and especially if you look at this part, this is equal to pass XOR IV1, right? So this is the entire encrypted message is equal to this, which is exactly the same as one of the previous message. Therefore, when Evo received this message, Evo can just get this encrypted message, the ciphertext, and then compare this ciphertext with the previous one. And then if it's equal, then Evo knows that originally the crypto system sent C0. But if it's different, then Evo will know that previously the crypto system sent C1, which is fail. And that's it. That's it for the attack. Any questions? I really want to pause here because I know this might be a little bit hard to understand. So if you have questions, please let me know.
So from like using this is how they find the key, right?
No, this is not the way that he finds the key. This is the way that Evo tells what the previous message is. So the goal here for Evo is not to infer the key. The goal for Evo is to infer what is the plain text of the previous message, given that he receives the cipher text of the previous message. So he's going to choose between these two. He knows that the previous plain text will be either pass or fail. And then he receives the encrypted message. And then he wants to know, like, if it's pass or fail for this encrypted message.
So in that function that you wrote down there, the K pass XOR IV, that long one.
Yeah.
In a sense, they're just putting in C0 because they still don't know it's pass. They're not actually using pass or IV, XOR IV, XOR IV2, right? Because they still don't know what that message is, right? But they're just putting in C0 and then C0 XORed with IV2, and then the encryption algorithm XORs IV2 onto that again, which gets rid of the previous IV2. Is that what I'm understanding? And then they'll be able to know that they're getting the word pass or not getting the word pass?
I think one thing that you may understand wrong is that Evo doesn't know exactly like the previous message is, but Evo knows that this message is either pass or fail. So there's only two options over there, like previous one. Here, there's only two options. It's either the plain text is pass or fail. So what Evo does is he just choose one of this possibility, one of the options, which here I just put pass over here. So let's just assume that the previous message is pass, or say, let's just put this plain text, one of the options, pass over here, and then try to let the crypto system encrypt it. And because of this nice way of constructing the message, it just cancel out the, effect caused by IV2. Does it make sense?
Okay, yeah, I think I understand. So if there were more than two options, would this have been a lot harder?
Right, you're
or
right.
even possible?
Like, if it let's say there are three options. So that can be pass, fail, or incomplete. Then what Evo has to do is Evo has to ask the crypto system to encrypt two messages. So it could be one of this, and the other it can be E of K, say fail, XOR IV1, XOR IV3, XOR IV3.
So this is really like dependent on us either, or on Evil knowing that that the message could only be like two options.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
You
yes.
Like take any message that was like any length and you had no idea what was in it and like try to do this and it wouldn't.
Right. Exactly. So here is that Evo knows that there's only two possibilities. So he knows that he can use, like, if there's n possibilities, that Evo can construct n-1 messages, asking the crypto system to decrypt for him and then infer which message it is. Okay, and then let me take a look at the chat.
Wouldn't Evil's encryption
question.
only be this?
Do we never bother to find a key?
If they know K.
We hope that we can find a key, but in this attack, approach, we cannot find a key. And so Evo knows the possibility. Yes, I mean, in this specific attack model, we're assuming that Evo knows the possibility of the plain text. And this is exactly the reason why at the beginning, I'm saying that let's assume that their crypto system is going to send either C0 or C1. And Evo is going to guess which one that is the message that crypto system sent before.
And also Evo knew IV1 and IV2, right? Like from another.
Right. I mean, but that is the public information, because as long as Evo knows C0, he already knows about IV1, right? And then now we're assuming that you can predict IV2, or say this is the vulnerability of this crypto system. Everyone can predict IV2 given IV1.
Oh, because the cipher text contains the encrypted message and the IV1. right?
Yes, exactly. Otherwise, anyone else, like a benign receiver, even though he has the key K, he cannot decrypt the message. Okay, and then can you please explain again how Evo knows that IV2? Okay, yeah, so here is, right now we're still assuming that for Evo has this power, we'll say super, quote unquote, superpower, in a sense that if he knows about IV1, he can predict IV2. And this is why we're originally we're saying this is a crypto system, CBC with predictable IV. But then in real world, how could this happen, right? If IV2 got like randomized, it just like randomized shuffled every time that it's generated. So it turns out that there was a vulnerability about that actually. And the way that it designs is that IV2 is always equal to the previous encrypted message. So this means that IV2 is equal to this or that, right? So if Evo already received, say, C, it could be, which it can be either C1, or C0, or C1. He will get both the IV and the encrypted message. And the encrypted message will be the next IV2. So it's going to be the next initial vector, which is the issue that, which is the root cause of that particular real world vulnerability. So what I mean is this happens in the world, and this is how bad that people can just overlooking the fact of IV so that evil people can predict IV2. And also this is an example of how evil people manage to predict IV2 given IV1. And again, right, this will only work if evil knows the options of all the previous ciphertext. But then it doesn't have to limit to 2 ciphertexts. It can be n ciphertext. And what evil does is just try this, come up with this E for n minus 1 ciphertext, and he can just guess. He can get the all the possibilities and then infer which one is the right one according to the previous received messages. And by the way, guys, I saw there are many questions on the chat. I think this is great. I know that this can be confusing because the way that they attack, what is given, what is assuming, what's the goal of the attack, this is very different from the previous one, the previous DAS attack that we talked about, which is to infer the key, right? So it is okay that you feel confused right now. And then if you do, just ask me questions. I will answer those questions here. Another question, can you explain how email knows what ciphertext is being used first based on what the crypto system sends back to evil? So that is the question, right? I mean, the evil people, evil doesn't know what ciphertext is being, I guess what you mean by the plain text, right? So because evil receives the ciphertext, but evil doesn't know which plain text was used, either pass or fail, but he didn't know which one it is. And this is exactly what this attack model tried to achieve. Evil tries to attack this model in order to know which is the exact plain text that crypto system used to encrypt. Cool. Okay, and then now comes the chosen plain text attack. Emma was asking that why evil can just send as what it is. This is the way that the model works, the attack model works. And this kind of attack, we call it chosen plain text attack, meaning that in this specific kind of attack, evil has the ability to decide or to select a plain text and then ask the crypto system to encrypt this plain text for him. So evil has this power, and we're assuming that evil
Hi everyone, I just want to check, can you see the screen right now, or you just only see a blank screen?
There's
Okay,
just
so
a blank screen.
right, I'm sorry for that. Just give me a second. I think this is because my laptop was out of power and I was just trying to charge it to another like a power station with a screen. And then when I switch to another screen, this comes a problem. Just give me a second, let me fix it. Okay, I think it's back now. Let's continue. Yes, sorry guys for this thing. Let's resume.
Has this. And then the question is, can evil break the crypto system given this power? And similar to Trojan plain text attack, there's also Trojan cipher text attack, meaning that evil can choose which cipher text that the crypto system is going to decrypt for him. And then because of that, evil wants to be able to crack the crypto system using a specific well-designed cipher text. And also another thing is what we talked about last time, which is known plain text attack, meaning that evil is kind of like passively sit in the middle and know some pairs of cipher text and plain text, but evil will not have the chance to choose a specific plain text. Okay, that's pretty much for symmetric crypto. We've been talking about symmetric crypto for a very long time, and now is the time for us to wrap up. So what we have talked about for symmetric crypto, we've been talking about this for three classes, or maybe four. Honestly, I already forget, but never mind. Those are the content that we cover, and those are the content that I hope you to understand. So first of all, we talk about stream ciphers, and we say that stream cipher is secure as long as the pseudorandom generator, which is the generator that generates the key stream given the key K, and the stream cipher is secure as long as this generator is unpredictable, meaning that if you know the previous key stream, you will still not be able to know what the future key stream is. And also, of course, you have to have the key stream as long as the plain text. Otherwise, there will be not sufficient key stream that you can XOR with plain text. And then in terms of block cipher, which is also something that we've been talking about this for courses, for classes. So the first thing about cipher, about block cipher, how it works. And it's quite simple. The way that it works is just like cut those input, cut the plain text into blocks with equal length, and then just encrypt each of the block. And then we talk about DAS. We know that DAS is vulnerable to brute force attack. And then if we just improve the DAS to 2 DAS, we know that it doesn't help because of this, sorry, what's the name of it? It's not called man in the middle attack, but like someone that you can do the middle, you can stay in the middle and then attack. It's called meet in the middle attack. Okay, and then, but then how can we do to mitigate that? Can we improve that to be more immune to brute force attack? And we could do is to do 3 DAS, but it can be expensive because you have to, every time you encrypt a message, you have to do that for 3 times. Or you can have another a different crypto system, which is called AES, which uses substitution and permutation instead of the Festo network. All right, and that's all about a single block. And then we talk about multiple blocks. How about we have multiple blocks? How are we going to encrypt it? One way is to use ECB, meaning that we just use the same key, encrypt the block one by one, and then concatenate those blocks together. And then we know that it is vulnerable because same plain text will be encrypted into the same cipher text. And then if you look at the whole picture, you will realize that the entropy didn't change. But on the other hand, what you could do is you can change that to CBC. So you just like, you chain those blocks together, you get a better block, and then you use an initial vector as the first XOR for the first block. This seems to be vulnerable, seems to be secure. However, if IV itself is predictable, then you can predict, you can do a chosen plain text attack, meaning that you can guess which message it is by crafting a specific plain text and sending to the crypto system to encrypt for you. And also, we mentioned about two different types of attack. One is known plain text attack, and this works for 2 DAS, for the DAS brute force attack. And the other is chosen plain text attack, and this works. This attack works for CBC with predictable IV. Okay, so that's pretty much for symmetric crypto. And now let's go to the next part, which is asymmetric crypto. So for asymmetric crypto systems, the goal is that can we encrypt the information without requiring a secure and shared secret key? So it means that everyone's going to have a different key, and this guy is going to use this key to encrypt, and another person is going to use a different key to decrypt the message. So again, every party, say if there are 2 people, they try to communicate, they try to talk to each other, then they have to have two pairs of keys, and one is called public key and the other is called secret key. Also, asymmetric crypto system is also called public key crypto system, cryptography. So if you just like search it, sometimes you will see public key crypto, and that's the same. That is, I would say, these 2 names people usually they use it interchangeably. So if you just say crypto, asymmetric crypto, it's the same as public key crypto. So you don't have to differentiate these 2 terms, it's the same. All right, then for public key crypto system versus a symmetric crypto system, what do you need to know? So what kind of properties that we hope that the crypto system holds? We hope that the crypto system supports confidentiality, which I will explain it again later. And also it supports non-repudiation. And also we hope that the crypto system, it's easy to generate those public key and secret key. But it's going to be very hard to infer a secret key based on a public key, because public key is going to be the key that's going to just like give it to everyone who wants to communicate with the guy who has the secret key. So we don't want the people who receives the public key can infer the secret key very easily. And then when I say hard, it means that it's computationally impossible. So I don't want other people can compute secret key given a public key. And also, of course, then you want to keep your secret key private. You don't want to give your secret key to other people. And then also you want to make sure that everyone knows about this public key, and inevitably the adversary, like Eve or evil, will be able to know the public key as well. And this comes to the requirement, right? It's like if there is an adversary evil, and if evil knows about the public key, we don't want evil to be able to generate a secret key based on the public key. And this is the properties that we hope a crypto system in a symmetric crypto system should hold. And Emma was asking what is non-repudiation, and I will talk about that very like 1 or 2 slides later. So you will see that later on. Okay, so the first is confidentiality. All right. In terms of confidentiality, let's just use an example. Suppose that Alice wants to send a message to Bob. Then what Alice wants to do is that Alice is going to use Bob's public key to encrypt this message. And then once Bob received this ciphertext, Bob is going to use his own secret key to decrypt the message. So if we have this way to decrypt and encrypt message, then what does Bob know? Bob knows about this plain text, right? And also Bob knows the ciphertext. And also because that Bob knows the secret key, only Bob would know about the plain text other than Alice. And then let's suppose that there is a third people, Eve versus Evil. So Eve knows about the public key of Alice, and Eve knows about the public key of Bob. Then the question is, can Eve decrypt the ciphertext using any of those public keys?
No.
Right, exactly. And Eve should not be able to decrypt this message, even though Eve knows both public keys. So what does Eve know at this one? He doesn't know that. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know the. Okay, I shouldn't say that he doesn't know anything, but I should say that Eve doesn't know anything about the plain text, and this is good. And this is what we call confidentiality. So it means that Alice and Bob, they just nicely keep the confidentiality of this specific message. No one other than Alice and Bob will know about the specific plain text. And then Tate was asking this question, how are the private keys securely distributed? This is a good question. And also, this question also apply for symmetric key, right? So how to securely distribute keys, basically, like symmetric keys or private keys. Actually, for private key, usually the way that it works is that, like Alice or the Bob, he himself generates a key pair, a public key and private key, and then he just sends the public key to the public, and then keep the secret key, keep the private key himself. So usually, like they don't send the private key out, although sometimes they do, which I will talk about that in next lecture, not today. So today we just talk about how the crypto works, and then next time we're going to talk about how we're going to securely send those keys. All right, and then non-repudiation. This is the question that Emma was asking, right? What it is non-repudiation. So let's suppose that Alice wants to make a statement that everyone knows is from Alice. So basically, Alice wants to let everyone know that she herself is the person who sent the statement. For example, I want to make a statement saying that there's no class next week. This is not true, by the way, guys. I'm just like giving this as an example. But everyone can say that. Maybe a malicious student, one of you guys want to impersonate me and I say this. But then I really want other people to know that when I say there's no class next week, it really comes from me, so that you are sure about this message. So what should I do? What I could do is I can use my secret key to encrypt this message. There's no class in the next week, to encrypt this message, and then have a ciphertext. And then I'm gonna send this ciphertext to everyone. And then suppose that I already give you the public key. Although you have all different kinds of keys. It's only that my public key can decrypt this message and give you the plain text. So suppose that you're Bob, you receive a message, you receive my ciphertext, and then you know that you can only use my public key to decrypt this ciphertext. So what do you know at this point? Right, exactly. As Emma said, he knows that the message, and also he knows that this came from Alice, because no one else will have the secret key to be able to encrypt this message to the ciphertext. That's great. And then let's think about this from Eve's perspective. If Eve knows about the ciphertext, and also Eve knows about the public key from Alice, or say from me, right? So what does Eve know? So this is Eve, not even. This is a typo over here. So Eve will still know about, yes, exactly, as Emma said, this is the same thing as Bob. Eve still know about this message. So Eve knows the message that I sent, which is there's no class in the next week. And also Eve knows that this message comes from Alice, but Eve cannot impersonate Alice. There's no way for Eve to say that actually it is me sending this message. And also Eve cannot forge this message. All right. And this is what we call non-repudiation. And we want to add this two together: confidentiality plus non-repudiation. What if we hope that we send a message that Eve will not be able to know what the plain message is? And also, Eve will not be able to forge the message, will not be able to impersonate me. So how should I do? We can combine the secret key and the public key together. And this is why originally we say that let's assume that both Alice and Bob has its own public key and secret key. Then what I could do is I send a message to Bob, and also I want to convince Bob that this message coming from me, and I don't want Eve to know about this message. So first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my own secret key to encrypt this message. And then after I encrypt this message, I have one more encryption. I use public key, Bob's public key, to encrypt this message. And then I got the ciphertext. And now when Bob received this message, because Bob is the only person who has the secret key of Bob, right? So Bob can first of all do this first layer peeling off, just like who do this first layer in decryption. He got the SA of after decrypt the entire message with his own secret key. And then Bob is going to use Alice's public key to decrypt this message again, so that he knows that this is Anne, and he knows that this comes from Alice, and this is the message that Alice wants to tell Bob. Okay, and now I have a question here. Why is the message is encrypted in this way? Why not we have something like we put this first? So we use the public key of Bob to encrypt the message first in the first layer, and in the second layer we then use the use Alice's secret key to encrypt it. Why this cannot work? Okay, because Bob wouldn't be able to decrypt the first layer. Well, I mean, Bob can still decrypt the first layer, right? Because Bob has public key of A. So Bob can use PA to decrypt the first layer. And then Tyler says, you could use PB to know that this message is from Alice. Why is that? Or put it in this way, if I am Eve, can I also use PB to encrypt a message. And Peter says that, and Zhicheng says that Bob didn't know who sent out message, right? Bob didn't know it because everyone can use his public key to encrypt the message. That's correct. And Peter says, Eve will be able to tell the messages from Alice. Right, that's also correct. So you are giving Eve an additional information, which is this comes from Alice. And Michael says that because Eve has PA, right, exactly. So this means that Eve has the PA, right? So Eve can at least decrypt the first layer. And also Eve knows that this message comes from Alice. And from Bob's perspective, Bob using Alice's public key, he encrypted. Bob also knows that this message comes from Alice, which is great. But then looking at this, the second part, Bob can use his own key to encrypt it, to decrypt it. So Bob will be able to get this message. So Bob will know that this message comes from, right, so Bob knows that this message comes from Alice, but then this is something that Eve can construct in the middle, because Eve can use Bob's public key to have this part generated. But Bob didn't have, right, Bob didn't have SA, exactly. And he wouldn't be able to decrypt. But Bob has SB. Okay, now let's continue. So there are many examples of asymmetric cryptography. RSA is something that we will talk about, although we are running out of time today. I will talk about that next time. And then there are a Kramer shop crypto system, also elliptic curve, digital signature algorithm. So what I want to show here, or what I mean to say here, is that there are many different kinds of asymmetric crypto. Although we are going to only touch RSA, there's still also other different ways. And if you're interested in, I encourage you to look into that. Actually, I think it's last year, there is an elliptic curve crypto challenge that designed by me in DEF CON CTF. Also, if you're interested in that, you can look into that particular challenge. It was a quite fun challenge. And I just bump into a math that don't understand and then make it as a challenge. And very interestingly, people look into that challenge, and also people realize the math, which is hard to prove at that point. And people just keep discussing about the proof of that specific elliptic curve property, even after the competition. They even create a website to talk about that specific elliptic curve property, how to prove that, which is quite fun. So this is all about today's content. Next time, we're going to talk about RSA. But besides that, I also want to give you a more heads up for what we're going to talk about in the future. So we're going to talk about asymmetric crypto. We're going to talk about RSA specific. But then one thing that I want you to think about is for RSA, does it satisfy any confidentiality? And then does it satisfy message integrity? Meaning that what if an attacker flips a bit? If someone just changed a bit, how can we know it? And also, how are we gonna trust the public key that we receive from the outside, like from the wild? If I'm gonna release my public key to other people, can someone in the middle just replace all the public key that I send to other people? Just replace that with their own public key, so that every time this guy's gonna just sit in the middle when I communicate with other people like students. So if there isn't evil people who sit in the middle, change every piece of information that I send to the students, he can probably make this happen. But then how are we gonna trust the public key that we receive from the outside, from one person? there is a very interesting and nice infrastructure that is set up to guarantee the security of public key, or say the trustworthy of public key. And we will talk about that in next lecture or next lecture, depending on how far we go in the next one. All right, and that's pretty much for today. We will probably have assignment released either this week or early next week. So stay tuned. I will let you know when the assignment is released, and I will announce it in Piazza. All right, guys, have a good one. See you in next lecture. Thanks.
All right, everyone, this is pretty much for today. And you may ask about the assignment. So the assignment will not be something that like you just implement the entire DES or AES crypto, but you will be asked to do something like maybe like a Caesar attack, to attack like a Caesar cipher, where you'll be asked to implement some of the attacks that we mentioned during class. So if you don't know those attacks like DAS attack or today's attacks that I talk about, you may want to make sure that you understand that so that you'll be able to finish your assignment in time. And I'll probably release the assignment, as I said, like either the end of this week or early next week, and then I will let you know. Yes, there will be a description about the assignment when I release it, so for sure you will be able to know what you're going to do. You will have a pretty clear description, just as the previous assignment. Cool. All right, thanks guys. I'm gonna see you next week. Yep, have a good one.